Do you want to speed up your video editing workflow? Then stay tuned to make you faster in your video editing by twice, if not more, by using this tool called TourBox. Let's talk about the most obvious feature of using an editing console, the knobs and sliders. Because most of your keyboards don't come with any of the knobs or sliders. And that is because your keyboards are optimized and designed for specifically typing. That's why you see journalists writing an entire article in almost real time when a conference is taking place. However, when you're editing video, it's not the same as where you interact when you're typing. So what I mean by that is when you're editing video, there are a lot more adjusting and scrolling, meaning instead of pressing actions that you would do on your keyboard, it's much more clever to have rotational actions such as knobs and sliders to adjust different parameters. So on that note, TourBox comes with 3 different rotational dials, and not only that, you can use these knobs with combination of keys in TourBox to do different things. For example, when I adjust this, it moves my playhead by 1 frame. But when I adjust this key with my thumb and move the same dial, now it's going to move my playhead by 10 frames, which will allow me to scroll through my timeline faster. Or I can press this top button and adjust volume with the same dial. Being able to use different functions with combination of different keys is a great feature and a lot more versatile compared to products such as the Shuttle Pro 2. Although there are 2 adjusting knobs here, but having 2 dials is not as versatile as using different keys and different dials in combination with one another. And since we're talking about using keys, let's talk about the keys next. Remember how I said keyboards are designed for pushing action, and it's much more clever to interact video editing with rotational action, but you still need to do that pressing action. For example, on my keyboard, I would have to press Command plus B to make a cut, then hit backspace to delete. Now, it's not that slow if you're doing it several times, but when I'm making my initial edit, I do the same action hundreds of times, if not thousands, and that little short second will eventually compound into a minute and maybe like an hour. Now watch this. All I gotta do is just press that little key in the TourBox to do the exact same thing. Notice I didn't have to move my hands anywhere. And the type of editing that I do a lot of Ken Burn effect. So instead of me reaching for the Ken Burn effect on my screen with my computer mouse, I just have to tap this twice to do the same exact effect in a matter of seconds. And just like the dials and the knobs that I talked to you about earlier, you can use any of this key with combination of other keys to do different things. For example, this key will make a ripple edit. If I press this key together with the same key, now that will work as Control Z or Control Z, depending on where you're from.
What country you from?
So when I customize all these different combinations, it gives me more than 20 different commands that I can do in a small package like this. However, on that note, whenever I fail to press 2 keys in the exact same time, TourBox is going to activate any of the other key that I pressed earlier. I wish they were a little bit more generous with that timing, and maybe they'll come up with the firmware update in the future. Whereas this controller that I have used for almost a year, this is called the Loupedeck Plus, and it has dedicated function button at the side, and this function button does not do anything by itself, but gives you access to different actions with different keys. Now that we talked about keys, let's move on to the most important reason why I decided to go for TourBox over any other controllers that I found or I have used. Again, going back to keyboard, what do you think is the most important feature of keyboard that helps you type faster? I think the most important feature of any keyboard is those little 2 bumps on your both index fingers. And it is because by you being able to feel those little bumps on both your index fingers, you can locate where each keys are without even looking at your keyboard. That's why try typing on any touch screens. It is almost impossible to do it without looking at it.
That's impossible!
This is exactly the same when you're editing video, and if you look at TorBox closely, you're gonna notice that each dials and each keys look different and feels different and positioned different. So ideally, once you get used to the tactile feelings of each keys and knobs, you're gonna be able to use your TorBox without even looking at it. However, there are trade-offs when you make all dials and all buttons different from one another, is that there are only so many physical buttons that you can fit in a small console like this, especially when they have different textures as well. That's why controllers like Loupedeck CT uses a touchscreen to give you even more access to different tools. But the reason why I didn't go for Loupedeck CT is because being able to use touchscreen will give more commands at the end of the day, but I'm gonna have to look at that touchscreen to be able to know what I'm pressing and then refocus on my computer screen. Therefore, if having more tools are much important to your workflow, then I'll probably go for something like Loupedeck CT. But if the tools and the shortcuts that you like to use are somewhere around 20 or somewhat range, then I'll probably go for TorBox because you can actually physically feel them and it's much faster. So those are the three important things. And now the big question. Should you buy something like TorBox or any other controller to help you edit fast? The answer is both no and yes. Now you're probably thinking,
Say what?
but hear me out first. I said no to those who are starting out because when you're just starting out video editing, there are many factors that you can save your time apart from memorizing shortcuts, and no controllers or keyboards will help you do that faster, but only practice can. So when you're just starting out, I think it's much more important to learn your software inside and out with your computer mouse first, then maybe move on to keyboard shortcuts. But even then, you have to learn what your workflow is like. For example, the reason why I switched from Loupedeck Plus after using Loupedeck for more than a year is because the work that I do, I hardly do any color grading, and I'm not good at color grading. So the color grading part is not really my priority and not my specialty. But Loupedeck Plus is much more geared toward the color section of video or creative process. Therefore, I felt that Loupedeck Plus was not suitable for the type of video that I make. But it might not be the same for you. You may enjoy color grading more, and it is much more important to your workflow and the types of stuff that you like to do. So definitely spend some time researching different controllers. There are so much more other controllers. And as I said, for those who are just starting out, learn your program first inside and out. You'll know what suits you the most. And that's all I have to say about adopting your controller in your workflow and TorBox. I hope this video was helpful. If it did, please subscribe and don't forget to destroy the like button. Until next time, bye!